Good evening.
Hello. We're here.
We're here at Messianic Lamb Network and broadcasting in School Pods Canada and
YouTube
and different places here. We're coming to you tonight for the Smarten show.
This is episode number 9. And we are delighted to be with you. We are Darryl and Milena Weinberg, founders and directors of School Pods Canada, a organization where we give you a voice in your children's education. And we are here to talk about education principles.
Absolutely. And recently we have been labeled as parent advocacy group. And then we realized, because we care about what parents' rights are, and we care about giving parents information and choices, then we probably are. And we're doing it from the perspective that we want to do what's best for our children and to raise the next generation, who we are leaving this world to when we are not around. So this is very, very important. And one of the solutions obviously is the school pods. That we have come up with a model that helps parents choose to homeschool their children, and we provide a lot of support in that area. But we also feel strongly about informing parents. And you know what? There's a lot of information available nowadays. I think what parents are struggling with nowadays is the time.
Yeah.
The time to go and look at this. So I would challenge now families, as now we are back to school. It's September, and homeschoolers are settling into routines. Kids who are going to public or private schools are settling into routines. Families are getting adjusted to these new schedules where they have to be up early. And
although not all of them, we actually had one homeschool family said,
we don't get to it till 10-ish, 10:30.
10:30.
Which is fine, and that's the beauty of homeschooling. So here, a little plug-in for homeschooling. But still, it seems like when the fall comes, the summer is over, we tend to settle into new routine. And my challenge to you would be, just like we do during New Year's Eve and our New Year Day, we make resolutions. We just say, hey, this is a fresh start. It's a new year, it's a new beginning. I would say a new school year, and we kind of all follow the school year being September. This new school year is an opportunity for your family to have some goals, personal goals, academic goals, maybe life goals, just in different areas of your life. Well, why not do that now, since we are starting something new? And this is a time a lot of decisions need to be made in terms of where children will be learning, what they will be learning, what do we want the extracurricular activities to be. Let's have families sit down and talk together about goals, and then scheduling things and developing routines and working step by step towards your goals. And the reason I'm talking about this right now, because it is a time for parents to be making a lot of choices. It is time for parents to be aware. And so if you don't have time to look up information that is going to keep you informed as to how to make good choices for your children, then it's time to start scheduling that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I have heard many experts advise that maybe each family should have, I guess, Sunday nights or whatever, one evening or one day when they get together and they just connect as a family. Now, the other strong advice from experts is that families meet at the dinner table every evening.
Yeah, studies actually show that families that eat together tend to have much stronger relationships and tend to stay together because eating is a time of intimacy. And it's actually
Yes.
something I cover in my book, that
Yes.
there's a lot of emotion that is attached to eating, and we even see how God wants to eat with us in the tabernacle in the temple. Within the holy place, there were three pieces of furniture. You have the incense altar, which represents the prayers. You had the menorah, which represents the light of God. But then you had the table of showbread, and
Yes.
every day new loaves of bread were to be baked and put out there. Table of showbread that was to be shown to the priests to symbolize the fact that even God wants to sup with us.
God the Father wants to have a meal with his children, which is us.
Mm-hmm.
And God teaches us things by modeling, by acting the way he wants us to act.
and if you look at some of the greatest miracles that were done in the Bible, other than raising from the dead, it was the feeding of the 5,000, the 4,000, that really out of nothing, out of a couple of pieces of food, that Yeshua was able to feed 20,000 people or something like that. And so it's demonstrative of the fact that there's intimacy with eating. Some of our greatest memories, I mean, who didn't, when they started dating, go out to restaurants and something like
for
that?
A meal, have a chat, because this is when we slow down and we talk to one another.
That's how I got you.
Right. You see, that's so it's very important to have meals together.
It gets you married.
Note to self. Well, but once you're married and you have the children, then that intimacy and that relationship is now developed with the children.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the time. And nourishing it's kind of like source of life. That's what sustains life.
Yeah.
And when we nourish our bodies, we are also filled emotionally in many different ways, because it is intended to feel good. And this is the time to be with your children. This is the time to have these conversations. And if families have tough time kind of having meaningful conversations, and I have this box that I have for my school pod here, that when we sit down, even when we sit down for a lunch during school time, I take out the box. If I hear the kids talking about video games the whole time, I stop that conversation.
That's trouble.
And then a box comes out. It's called the Chatterbox Family Edition. And so it has different sections. It's like a recipe box almost, and different sections and different topics that then you can discuss, and obviously has for different age groups and different levels. I strongly suggest that you, for your family, find something like a tool or something that helps you with dinner time conversations, and make that routine. At first, it's uncomfortable if it hasn't been a habit and routine, but soon the children feel that that's a special time for them. And I know we have a teenager, so it's like, we got to do this, but he enjoys these things because we do those as a family together. And the reason we talk about this is because right now, parents more than ever have to connect with their children. We've talked in the past about schools that are passing policies that where parents have different opinions than what the school is trying to teach the children, then the parents should be kept away from the conversation, and children should be so another adult in the school should be having these conversations with the children, and parents not to be involved. So you do not want someone else to replace you. So start having these conversations at your dinner tables. So that is one suggestion that I have, setting goals as a family. And there's just so many suggestions. There's so many parents who blog and so forth of how to set a family goals, and how to track those goals, how to keep track, how to reward yourselves, have reward systems, and so forth. And this is because, first of all, we as adults need to do this to model that to our children. So because they don't know what it looks like. But second, I want to talk about something called areas of control or areas of influence. And especially at these times when a lot of parents are feeling inadequate, they're feeling like there's just so much craziness going on around the world and in our communities, in our societies, policies, and so forth. Parents don't feel like they can do anything. Children don't feel like they can do anything. Everybody feels helpless. So I would like to introduce tonight the concept of areas of control. And I'm purposefully doing that because when we do that on the personal level, then we can do that in a community level. We can do that in our countries, whatever levels and I want people not to feel helpless. I want people not to feel overwhelmed. And you and I often feel overwhelmed. And then we have to really stop and say, what can we do? What can we not do? What is it that we can't do that is not up to us? And just focus on those things, So what I can control. So you will, if you look on the internet, there's all kinds of diagrams and so forth. I just have chosen one here. What I can control. And so this is a good topic of conversation at the dinner table. Being kind. That's something we can choose. A lot of people could be rude to us.
Can you get this on here and we can actually pull it up on the screen?
Well, you can then look it up. Areas of control. I believe that's what I looked up.
Okay.
And then you can do that. Yeah, I looked at areas of control and go to images.
Oh, images? Okay.
Yeah, well, because the diagram will be there. You could read articles. That is not... we don't want Etsy.
Okay.
Yeah, you were given... what browser? Maybe this browser is not going to help you.
No.
Okay, so you may search. Yeah, I would say Google gives you...
Okay.
In this case, I recommend Google. So go to images again.
All right.
And let's just a little bit more detailed diagram maybe would be helpful. I guess I went to shop and that's where there were more that were for sale that were more detailed. But areas of control kind of have to do with also, I talked briefly about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. All right, so it's not here. So let's just have the ones that are actually available to us.
Well, there's one here.
Right. Well, this is more, your inner circle is the area of control. That is the area of influence. And then on the outside of that is things we let go and things we accept. So that is a very general, but I just wanted to go into something a little bit more specific. So we didn't have this pulled up. So I'm just going to go over the one that I do have here. Okay. What I can control. I can control being kind. I can control doing my homework if you're a child, or doing my housework if you're looking after housework. Responding properly, right? How many times we've scolded our kids and said, don't talk to me like this, and then they would say, well, so and so talked to me like that first, and so responding properly. We still can respond properly no matter how others respond. Studying for tests for young children, or we can actually be informed to be better parents and look up some experts' advice on how to be better parents. So that's studying, and life is a big test. Being accountable is something that we control. Our decisions is what we control. We can control the friends that we choose and the surroundings. Forgiving. And that's one of the hardest ones. It's hard, but it's something that we choose to do. And it's important that we do it.
Well, and we have to emphasize that forgiveness is not a feeling. No. We don't forgive because we feel like forgiving. And even if we've forgiven someone, that doesn't necessarily mean that the hurt is going to automatically go away. What it does is it removes the right of offense. And, from a biblical perspective, we have no right not to forgive someone because we have been forgiven.
What does the Lord's Prayer, Our Father,
forgive us our trespasses or our sins as we forgive those who sin against us.
Yeah.
And then what Yeshua actually says is that if you do not forgive, you will not be forgiven. And so we can't expect to receive forgiveness from God if we're going to continue to hold offense. That doesn't mean that we just whitewash whatever was done to us. If there was a high crime and misdemeanor, if there was a murder committed against a family member, if there was abuse that was committed when we were younger, maybe of a physical or even a sexual nature, and there's been no transformation in the person, then forgiveness doesn't mean that we just allow them to go back into our lives again.
That's just us deciding not to carry the burden.
To release them of the offense, because God also says, leave room for vengeance is mine, I will repay.
Right.
When we refuse to forgive someone, we sit in the place of judge, and we have no right to that.
Right.
And so it's an extremely hard thing to do. Then we have to consciously do it, and we have to then ask God's help, say, Lord, help me with this. I am choosing to forgive. Now you have to line up the feelings that go with that. But what people find is that, number one, lack of forgiveness will cause all kinds of illness.
Yes.
Okay, because bitterness is poison to the soul.
Yes.
And if you hang on to an offense for long enough, it will start to affect the bodily functions. Cancers have come out of that, and other autoimmune diseases, because lack of forgiveness, the carrying of anger, will produce chemicals and hormones in the body that are counter to us, like cortisol and adrenaline, and you eventually get sick with that. But also what it does is it frees you up from carrying the burden. Lack of forgiveness, it's been said, is like drinking poison and then expecting the other person to die.
Right. And so in the context of family, the parents, the adults in the family have to practice this. And I know you and I practice this all the time because...
Oh, I forgive you several times a day.
Forgive you too, Heidi. No, but we do. I mean, conflict in the family arises, and then we have to transact that forgiveness in front of our son and just model that.
Right.
Everything I'm talking about right now, what we can control, adults have to show that first.
All the time.
If we expect our children to develop those skills. So keep going with what we can control as well. Trying again, not giving up. How we respond to challenges, doing our chores or duties, obligations, how we spend our free time. So that goes into, finding time for things.
Mm-hmm.
Being honest is something we can control. Asking for help, working hard, apologizing, and how we respond to others. So that's what we can control. And so when a situation arises, we can look at all these different criteria and see if there's anything in these areas. And of course, this is not a full list, but this is kind of a child-friendly, family-friendly list. What we can't control. So when a situation arises, we have to focus on what we can control. And we tend to focus on the things we can't control, like what the other person did, right? Or what the situation is, the circumstances are. So let me read some of the things we cannot control that our mind kind of goes to when we shouldn't. What others, we cannot control others taking care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like not even of us, themselves. How others treat me or us. We cannot control if someone else keeps trying or they give up. We cannot control others being kind to us or anybody else. We cannot control who loves us.
Mm-hmm.
And even one lesson that I have from my pastor in the first church I came to faith in, my pastor said something I'll never forget. He said, God does not force anyone into a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He said to me, God is a gentleman. He doesn't force anyone into a relationship. He invites, and he's gentle and kind, but he waits for you to respond to him, waits for you to initiate. And so the same thing. And God has accepted the fact that not everybody's going to love him, which is not his desire.
Because a one-sided relationship.
Oh, yes. And so my pastor said, God does not want a one-sided relationship. He wants a reciprocal relationship, because one-sided relationship is called stalking. So only a stalker feels that they have a relationship with somebody.
In the past 20 years, following someone has actually become a good thing on social media. But before that, it wasn't so good.
But if you put things out on social media, you want to be stalked. I'm just saying.
You're not saying, we're just saying.
You put it out there, right? Okay. Other things we cannot control. Your past mistakes. So not wanting to try something new or take a chance in a situation because you've made a mistake in similar circumstances in the past. You cannot control others being honest. You only can control what comes out of your mouth, not theirs.
Right.
You cannot control others asking for help or force them to receive your help without them wanting it. You cannot control your height. You cannot control your skin color, or you cannot control if others forgive you when you have done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times do we see or hear our kids, I'm not good at this, I'm not tall enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. And that's when the minds go into the things they cannot control. That's where the conversation with our children and ourselves needs to go to. Well, what can we do about that in the situation? Let's not talk about what we cannot do. It's not helpful. And so I wanted to introduce these concepts of what I can control. So it's called circle of control or zones of control, because when a parent feels, lets me know, like we talk to a lot of parents now through our school pods setting, and parents say, I feel like I have no choice. I made this choice. I decided to do this because I had no other choice. That's when I want to pull out the diagram of circle of control and say, well, here's the things you can't do about the situation, but here's some things you can do. And we have to try really hard. So a lot of parents have grown to, their distrust in the public school system has grown a lot. And that's partially because the public school system, different school boards have come up with policies where parental consent, like parents being informed or requesting parental consent, is now actually not even considered a parental right anymore. And so we spoke in our previous show that now in different provinces in Canada, legislation has to be passed to ensure that parents are informed or their consent is requested from schools. And this really reflects where our society has gone. What are the values? How does society look at family? I think that is really the underlying problem under all these disputes now, whether parents should have any kind of say in what happens. The fact that we're even debating whether parents should have information about their child, or whether they should give consent, and without consent, things cannot be done. And we've seen that being violated in the past 3 years.
Right across the board in every area of society.
Yes. And, we're talking about school boards, not requesting, not informing or asking for consent for vaccine clinics, about sex education, or about things that are age inappropriate, introducing things. But people really gasp when I tell them that in Toronto, there's a hospital called Sick Kids Hospital. I think it's a wonderful hospital because it specializes in treating children and has a lot of good things. I mean, we've had to go when Yossi was young.
Well, it's kind of a silly name for a hospital, though.
Sick Kids Hospital.
Well, you don't have Healthy Kids Hospital. It's redundant.
I know, but anyway, it's a good hospital and it has helped a lot of families. But because this trust over the years has been built, now Sick Kids Hospital, because of what's happened medically in the world, now has a policy that if a doctor deems that it's the best for the child, they may perform euthanasia without informing the parents, without asking the parents first.
And this has been in place for 5 years. So just let this sink in. The hospital now has a policy in writing for everybody to see.
It is
that they can choose to euthanize your child without your involvement or consent. Number one, the fact that a hospital would euthanize anybody just shows you how far society has fallen. But the fact that they would do it to children, and the fact that they would do it without parents' knowledge,
yes,
we have crossed the Rubicon, as it were. Society is now at the point where, according to Isaiah chapter 5 and verse 20, we are calling good evil and evil good.
Yes, it's considered humane to euthanize someone.
It is humane to euthanize, and it can be for any kind of arbitrary. You don't have to be terminally ill. As much as we, as believers in the Lord Yeshua, say that it is not our right in any manner, in any situation, to take a life, we understand the idea that if someone is terminally ill, in a lot of pain, there's no hope for them. Okay, we get that. But to say that, and Canada's MAID law, the medical assistance in dying, is some of the most liberal in the world, in that you can euthanize for all kinds of reasons. And the number of people choosing to end their life through medically assisted dying has skyrocketed to it's tens of thousands a year. And that they can do this they can do it to children who aren't old enough to make their own decisions without parental consent.
Yeah.
It beguiles description.
So, and this is why we're doing this show, because we need to understand that in North America, we've been comfortable, that really we've had many years of prosperity. We've had many years of people doing well. And, there was a time when the public school system was good. There was a time where health system was very good. There was a time where the politicians we elected actually represented what the people wanted. But we have to recognize that has declined.
Yep.
And it is coming to the point of not being the case. And it's reversed. Medical system, education system, political system has now changed its role from what was it intended to do. Governments are there to protect the citizens and their rights, and make sure that things are done according to what the citizens desire. And the governments don't care about that anymore.
No, they're not accountable to people anymore. And in fact, the government is now at war with its citizens. And this is right across the world. This isn't one particular country, virtually every country around the world. The World Economic Forum has people from its Young Global Leaders program that are either running several or are involved at a governmental level in many, many countries. And the World Economic Forum is only concerned about one thing. It is wanting a global government, which means that nationalism is evil in its eyes.
Well, and World Economic Forum, but there's also a UN takeover of our local municipalities and governments. And
well, they're working hand in hand with each other.
Yes.
They're all globalist organizations. I mean, even the very name, United Nations, it's all one global community. And which means that you, as a Canadian or an American or wherever it is that you might be watching this from, your rights as a national citizen are superseded by the global good, and what they have designed for a global government isn't in your best interest. It's like George Carlin used to say, it's a big club and you're not in it.
And the reason I want to approach this is because, and we've spoken about this, and it's coming up actually next Wednesday, September 20th. Right, September 20th. In Canada, there has been a march planned by parents. And really, it's a day where parents will be pulling their kids out of school if their kids are still in school.
Mm-hmm.
Or they would be gathering in local places, usually by school boards or government buildings and so forth, to protest this removal of family rights, parental rights.
Right.
And so originally that march was planned to happen in Ottawa. And I know some Canadians are kind of reminiscing about the truck convoy.
The Freedom Convoy last
year. The Freedom Convoy. And so Canadians want to do this again, except they're not realizing that the government now, because of what happened with that Freedom Convoy, they've now have some systems in place to deal with that. And so what is happening is an organizer from this Million People March has come forth in social media and said, I know we encourage you to be with your children, bring your children out and demonstrate and ask the government to keep the hands off your children so that you could be the parents and you could be the ones who are responsible. The children belong to you. So the whole point is to demonstrate that the children belong to the families and the parents and not the government.
Yeah.
The fact that we're even disputing this is really, really sad time in our history. But so this organizer came out and said, if you're going to be marching in Ottawa and Toronto is just the biggest city in Canada. So a lot of people are focusing in there. Yeah. And Ottawa is our capital. But she said, a lot of people told me not to do that, but I'm going to warn you that there are plans being made that may make those events unsafe for your children.
Yeah.
And so she said, the whole point is we want to make a point of defending our children. But if we're not careful about what we do, then we're putting our children in harm. And so I'm really asking that parents are really wise about how they exercise their parental rights. And this is why I partially spoke about the circles of influence and the circle of control and circle of things that we can't control, because we have to really evaluate that. How are we going to take a stand? And this is more than ever, we have to come together as a community. It is not time to show the government what we can do, because the government has power right now.
Yep.
And that's not something to be afraid of, because there's still more people in every country than there's people in government.
Yep.
So obviously what my appeal here is that people start looking not at their differences and what they disagree with others in their community, but what they can do to help one another. Because if you don't help one another, if you keep looking at what you have different and disagree with, then nobody wins.
Well, biblically it makes sense because, again, Yeshua says a house divided against itself, it cannot stand. And one of the most tragic times in U.S. history was the Civil War. 500,000 people were killed in that over a country that had been broken apart and divided over the issue of slavery, and there was all kinds of economic issues and things like that. And a country went to war against itself. Yes. And there were a lot of countries kind of looking at what was going on, England, France, et cetera, that, of course, had been part of settling the U.S. And there were some thoughts, that the U.S. could get carved up and absorbed, because when a nation goes to war against itself, it's easy pickings for outside enemies. If you're fighting internally, you can't defend yourself against external enemies. And it's the same thing. It's why the church is so divided. And because it's divided, it is ineffective in society today. We have thousands of denominations of various people who all claim that they have the correct interpretation of the Bible, when you realize that most of the issues that people divide over really aren't worth it. Yeah. They're not really critical. They're not fundamental issues. And this is, it's a tactic that politicians use all the time. It's called wedge politics. Yeah. The issue of race in the United States between blacks and whites and Hispanics and Asians. The issue of language in Canada has been used ever since Canada was founded, right, between the French and the English. We don't have so much of the racism issue, although there is, of course.
Oh, it's being brought into schools by critical race theory.
Yeah, well, but that's a manufactured thing, and it befuddles me.
That's just not our society.
The fact that, but I mean, people are buying into it, and it's like, we haven't had that issue before. Why is this all of a sudden becoming an issue? Because the media makes it so.
People from the United States used to come to Canada because we've never had racial issues.
No, we didn't have this, the problem, because we never had the issue of slavery, and so it wasn't used as. But it's something that's called wedge politics. Yeah. And politicians use that to divide and conquer, first of all, to get elected, but also to keep the populace divided. And they will use this over and over and over again, whatever issue they can come up with, to get people distracted so that you don't focus on the real issue. So every time that, the issue of Hunter Biden's laptop or whatever scandal is going on whatever's going on in the government right now, that's the real issue, is the corruption and scandal of our leaders. And what they do is they go create a manufactured crisis over here. It's called the Hegelian dialectic. Look up Hegel. He was a philosopher and a socialist. But they distract you, and they get you chasing after non-issues in order to bring about the desired result which they have, which is to keep you off of the main issue, which is what they're doing to you, either behind your back or, in now cases, right in front of your eyes.
Right. And so this is in big national kind of scale of the division. Now I want to scale it down to communities. Mm-hmm. You and I have been trying to connect with different communities to start pods. Mm-hmm. And we're noticing some things that I'm going to challenge now people in different communities to start thinking about and start checking their attitude towards that. Mm-hmm. One of the things is, and listen, we have been homeschoolers for 7 years now. Mm-hmm. And we chose to homeschool, and we loved it, that we were not the norm, that we were not the mainstream, but we were doing something different. Yeah. And I know a lot of homeschoolers are happy about that. Mm-hmm. But what I have noticed has happened over the years of homeschooling is homeschoolers now do not cooperate with one another. Homeschoolers families want to homeschool their own children, but they don't necessarily come out to community events, social events. And one example, just recently, so when schools go back to school here in Canada, the homeschoolers in Canada have something called not back to school day. And so all the homeschool, and probably in the US, you guys do that. Let me know if that's what you do. But it's just a wonderful thing. So the day when all the kids are going back to public school, all the homeschoolers, or as many as possible, go to parks and have a good play dates and fun day, and just enjoying the quiet streets and parks and places. So, and this has been wonderful over the years as we've been doing that. But this year, now we know for 2 years nobody did that because we weren't allowed to even be in parks and use the equipment there because somebody may catch COVID from sharing a swing or anyway.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, this is all over, and now we are at a time where we can again do not back to school day. And so here in the Niagara region, we had a mom initiate and say, hey, let's do that. Let's meet at this park. And I said, hey, this is a wonderful tradition. Let's go do that, Yossi. And we did. And we saw a couple of moms there. And I asked each one of them, are you the one who organized this? Because I wanted to, thank the woman who did that for initiating it. And I was told that the organizer of the event didn't show up. And listen, and she still served the community in a capacity, but then we have to lead by example. We have to participate. We have to go meet with the community. And I know, we're working with now we start to work with some homeschool moms who used to be teachers, and they're thinking, maybe I can use my skills. Please use your knowledge and skills to teach more than just your children. Especially there's so many homeschoolers that are struggling because they've never done it. They're yet to sit down and read different methodology of how to teach your children. If you're struggling with this, how to address it. You've gone to teachers college, you have learned about these things. So it's my number one challenge. And this is why I started School Pods Canada. I tell everyone I can have my own little mini school and I can do well and I'll be fine for myself. But I don't want to do it for myself when I know that I have skills, knowledge, gifting, calling from God that goes beyond just how to take care of myself, my family, and my immediate friends. So that's one challenge. Forming co-ops. The reason we started School Pods Canada is because when I actually started a co-op with this other mom and we invited all these families in there, they were excited about this because we planned everything out for them. But then slowly attendance started dropping. People just, there are too many things happening. We can't show up. And so here we were sitting with these great activities planned for the day, and nobody's there some days. Just a couple of people are there. And then at some point when we kind of called moms on the fact that, you need to be there because the whole point of this is to bring our kids together. And so that
it's a cooperation.
Well, not only did they need to bring their kids together, but each one of them was assigned a week to teach whatever topic they chose to impart on the kids something that they know about. And some moms did it, but most of the moms just said, oh, I didn't have time to prepare. And to me, that was very discouraging. The next stage of that was some moms, and listen, I am compassionate because a lot of issues come up. We struggle a lot of times. Sometimes we need to reschedule things. But then we went to the point where some mom said, I need to drop off my kids and I need to get some things done, not only because it wasn't a drop-off program to begin with. It was a co-op. All the parents. Anyway, so it really, I just noticed the slow kind of, not progress, regress of this whole community experience.
Well, it's entropy. It's, things go from a state of order to disorder.
Yeah.
Every time. That's second law of thermodynamics. It's actually a physical law.
Now, what happens in these communities, there will be a couple of people that will sacrifice themselves, and despite what it costs them and what chaos they had to go through to get there, They will, but if other people in the community keep on not showing up, keep on not sacrificing, keep on not acknowledging and respecting other people's time and energy, then those people might give up. It is almost easier to go in the negative direction. Well, not almost. It is easier. And it's harder to actually give more than you're getting out of a community. And so I really want to challenge the homeschoolers. I am all for homeschooling, and we've been doing it, and I keep doing it. Of course, now we're welcoming other children, because especially those of us who have homeschooled for a while, because homeschool really over the past couple of years became like pandemic schooling. Really.
Yeah.
It was an emergency homeschooling. It wasn't the peaceful and wonderful choice that we made years ago to homeschool. So the parents who are starting to homeschool now are under a lot of stress. School boards are starting to hunt them down because their funding is disappearing with every child being pulled out.
That's right.
And so now they're starting to make parents believe that they have some kind of obligation, and it's almost like they're bullying them and making them feel guilty for not being a good parent. And I've heard all kinds of cases and scenarios. The thing is, you have the right to homeschool, and that's the bottom line. And once you've told the school, I'm not attending, I'm pulling my kid out, there's nothing else you need to do to the school board and to the school. Now, it depends what your policies are for your state or your province. Some provinces you have to register with a specific school board, even if you're homeschooling. But that's, again, what I'm talking about is that we know that there's more pressure on parents right now, because really they're made to believe that the children are the state's property, and parents are just kind of being pushed aside. So I want to encourage you, on one hand, that you are the parent. You make the choice for your children. But on the other hand, I want to challenge you, because now as the parent of this child, you're not just the parent of this child. You're an adult in a community where other children need help. Other adults need help with their children, because there are difficult circumstances. And we need to get out of our comfort zone and to really start asking, how can I serve this community? What are the needs in this community? Because sometimes people decide, oh, I can do this for the community, but did you take the time to find out what the need is? Did you take the time to talk to other people in the community, meet in person and show up, when there's events?
The problem that everybody is facing right now is that everything is hard. There isn't anything that we do now that is not easy, that is easy, rather. And people are tired. We went up to a city that we were planning on starting a pod in. We've got a teacher who's all excited and hot to trot about getting going. She's a dynamic young lady, has the right vision, right attitude. She's an absolute pleasure to work with.
Professional, just a
goodness,
wonderful teacher.
If I could clone this girl and just distribute it all over the place, it would be wonderful. Yes. And so we said, well, we're going to have an open house. And so we drove up like 3 hours. We ended up organizing some other things around that area, because we have to maximize our time. We can't just go for one thing.
And our friend opened up her coffee shop. It wasn't her work day. But she opened up her coffee shop so we can have that meeting and have wonderful coffee and tea with the parents while
which we did, because she makes a great spicy coffee. And if you want, and you haven't ordered my book yet, I'll send you a sample of the coffee. It is just out of this world. Spicy coffee, got peppers and pepper oils mixed in there. So she opens up her place. We go up there. The teacher is there. She brought her boyfriend up there because, he had to drive. And we're sitting
over there,
and she literally handed out posters all over the place, talked to people. We had people who on social media said that, oh yeah, we're in, we're coming. And you know what? Nobody showed up. Not one person. And yet everybody claims that they're concerned about their children. we, instead of just complaining about it and sitting there and griping about how bad things are, we are providing a solution for this, and yet nobody was willing to take the time. And so if people aren't going to put forth the effort to make the change, look, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change in the world that you want to see. And if you're not willing to put forth the effort, if we're not willing to put forth the effort, then no change is going to happen. And the forces of evil that are conspiring against us and our children, and that's why we're here doing this show here, is because it's about the children. They're going to win.
Evil's working hard. How hard are you working?
Evil never sleeps.
Come against that.
You know, Psalm 121 says that he that keeps Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, but neither does the devil.
Yeah.
He's always working, and his people are always working. And they've got the long-term plan in place. They will work multi-generations in order to accomplish their goals. But we don't see the people who are really concerned about the state where things are rising up and saying no more. We get a one-off, but that's not the norm. And that's why we continue to lose the battle every day. And so what we're encouraging people to do is you got to step forward. You're going to have to roll up our sleeves. You know, the generation of World War II, they won that war in large part because people were willing to make sacrifices. Yeah. They were willing to make sacrifices that this generation is not willing to make.
Well, but another thing we've been discussing is usually when people come together and really fight to win something is because things are very hard. How bad and hard does it have to get for us here in North America to finally get it? Because it is not hard enough and bad enough yet. Because as I'm talking to people about pods, so some people say, oh, I can't homeschool. I'm just going to send my kids to school. And I say, well, we have a solution. Well, I'm hearing now requests. Well, I only want to send my child in a pod if it's that many girls in there and they're in this particular age, yeah, or that many boys in there in this particular age. And oh, well, this is not good enough. And I'll only participate if what I want is in there.
And what did she say?
Oh, and you know, so I know if such unicorns can exist, then this is what I want. It's time to stop looking at unicorns and stop. And she said that, and I said, you know what? Sometimes that ideal situation that you're looking for is not there. So it's up to us to build it and create it. And so that's why we're speaking to you today about your circle of control and the things you can control. Find out what you can do, and don't have specific requirements. I'll only participate if this. It is time to get over ourselves, and it is time to be a community. And I know some people at first will not reciprocate,
mm-hmm,
but if some of us get started, others will want this, and then we'll tell them.
Well, the groundbreakers are always the one who have to do the hardest work.
Yeah.
The highway is easy to travel over once it's built. It's the people who are building the highway are the ones who make the sacrifices. And it's the same thing. We're fighting it against an education system that is devouring our children. Yeah. And if you care about your kids, you cannot have them in the public school system. Simple as that.
Yeah.
And so we're providing a solution, but we need people who are going to come alongside of us and people who understand what the battle really is. So our encouragement to you is, listen, don't make it all about you. This is the problem with the church today too. Too many people are there for what they're getting out of it.
Thank you, God, for doing this for me.
Yeah. John Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yes.
You can replace the word country with every other aspect of your life. Ask not what my school can do for me, but what I can do for my, ask not what my community can do. Ask not what my church can do. Ask what you can do to make society a better place. Because if you don't, then who will?
Yeah.
And on that note, we wish you a good week. For those of you who are celebrating, Feast of Trumpets is on Friday night this week, Friday night, Saturday. And so we bid you a Chag Sameach, a joy of the festival. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. So thanks for joining us. And we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Have great celebrations in your communities. Show up.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.